Hey, tonight we're talking adoption again in our second installment with our good friend, Darin Shrock.
You're listening to the Dudes and Dads Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men be better dudes and dads by building community through meaningful conversation and storytelling. And now, here are your hosts, Joel DeMott and Andy Lehman.
You know, I am Andy Lehman, and I'm here tonight with my friend and co-host Joel DeMott, the man who solo flew a plane, and then jumped out with a parachute.
Well,
you didn't know that, but it happened.
I blocked that out of my. Andy's been working on. We're all working on, false things to say about each other in our intros. The fact that you make me sound like a psychopath really.
I do what I can.
Drives home the issue.
I do.
Andy, hey, hi, welcome back. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too, man.
So here's the deal. We've decided to do 2 episodes that are we're getting fancy over here at the Dudes and Dads Podcast, where we're actually we have themes. We have a theme that we have followed, and by theme I mean for 2 episodes. So baby steps.
That's fair.
Baby steps. We want to talk about just continue on our conversation with about adoption, about I don't know if I want to say all things adoption, because I don't feel like I'm nearly well versed enough to talk about all things adoption. But we want to get people on here that know something about adoption, who've been through the process, who are adoptive parents. And so last episode we obviously had our good friend Travis Miller and everything he talked about. If you haven't caught that episode, let me just say, I don't want to toot our own horn, but it was pretty darn good, Andy.
It was.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
I take zero. It's Travis's story. We just ask questions. We
just listen.
Right, we just listen. Really, why are we even doing this podcast, Andy? It's basically we should just bring in people into a room, have them sitting down in front of a microphone, and just tell their story. So Travis brought a particular perspective and experience about adoption, and our friend Darin Shrock, who. See, the thing is, Andy, I have to say, I have these weird experiences, and I'm going to see if Darin feels the same way. Darin and I grew up together, were young lads together, played baseball together, and then you capture each other at these older times in like these earlier times in life, right? And then you meet people again when we're like adults and have mortgages and children, and you're like,
lots of change since then.
There's so much change. So before I go on to this experience that I have with all of this, first just want to say, Darin Shrock, welcome to the show. Good to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be. I'm flattered.
Yeah.
Really
you should be, because it's pretty special up here.
I'm part of a theme now.
Yep, you're right. You're
incredible.
A thematic guest, which I don't even know if you've ever done that before. Darin, have you had the experience of people you went to school with, grew up with, you're younger, haven't seen them for a while, and then you run into them inevitably out in public or somewhere?
Yeah.
And I struggle because it's like I have that person locked in at 18 years old, and now they're 38, and a lot has changed. Darin and I actually have a mutual. Would it somebody we would know mutually that I had this experience with several years ago? Our friend Kyle Cook. Right.
Yeah.
So Kyle had been off out east. I was living in South Bend for years. Run into Kyle again. The first thing Kyle says to me, I'm not even kidding. He goes, I run into him, and before I can even get a word out, we haven't seen each other for years. He goes, I just want to say, I'm sorry. That's the first thing I was, and I'm like,
and you're like,
did we leave on bad terms?
Yeah.
Am I not remembering?
It was probably warranted.
Yeah, it was, but it seems appropriate. And jokes on us. Kyle's a pastor too now, so we've all turned our lives over. Things have happened, but yeah, this is a little bit of a reunion for us. And Darin does many things, which we're going to get into, but I graduated high school with Darin's wife, Jolene, who we're going to be talking about some, who is she's a force to be reckoned with. That's all I've got to say. And Darin, and I'm sure, again, Darin's going to have to explain what I mean by that. But Darin, we want to talk about 2 things tonight. Number one is you've got first of all, you're going to see it on the Facebook post when we post Darin's recent family photo that's been up. It's the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. His children, it's disturbing how just how beautiful they are. I don't know if I can. I don't want to go over the top here, but it's pretty great. 4 wonderful kids, your wonderful wife, but you've been on this. The way your family's come together is through this adoption story, and so we want to talk about adoption and what that's meant for your family and for your marriage. And then we're also going to talk about the organization you and your wife lead with a whole team of people in various roles. We're going to get into that the second half here. But first of all, as we like to say, give us the dad stats. Tell us about your wife, how long y'all been married, who your kids are, ages, all that good stuff.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really kind of you to say. It's one of the nice things about being an adoptive parent is you can brag about your kids and how beautiful they are, and it doesn't sound like you're talking about yourself.
That's right.
So yeah, I brag about how beautiful those kids are all the time, and can't take credit for it really, other than maybe some of the joy behind the smiles.
That's
but
good. Yep.
yeah, so I met Jolene in high school. We were 15 and 16 years old when we met, and we've been together for over 20 years now, but we've been married for 16 years.
Yep.
And it just keeps getting better. You're right. She's a force to be reckoned with. I usually am introduced when people find out who I am. They're like, oh, you're Jolene's husband.
That's good.
I am. I'm fine with that.
Charged.
I really
right.
am.
That's good.
She's an amazing woman, and I'm one of the biggest reasons I'm proud of her is because she keeps improving herself over the years. I mean, I did most of her homework her senior year.
That seems right to me. No offense, Jolene. That seems right to me.
And she ended up, our last adoption, she pretty much did the entire adoption. And so, yeah, she's amazing, and I love her very much. So, but I have 4 kids. They're 6, 10, 10, and 12. And they're all adopted from Ethiopia. The first one came home in 2009. Claire came home in 2009. Ben and Stella came home in 2011, and then Leo came home right in between 16 and 17, right over the new year, but 2017 was when he officially came home. So they've been a joy to be a part of their lives, and it's a privilege to be their parents and to really have them as really they are the ones who gave us our family, right?
Sure.
So it's been a real joy.
So let's step back a little bit and talk a little bit about how you came to that decision to adopt. What led you guys to that?
Yeah, man, it's it was through a lot of pain, to be quite honest, okay. and that's where a lot of adoption stories start. But we were starting a family my last year of law school, and that was when we went through the miscarriage. Was during that last year of law school, and from that point on, we were struggling to get pregnant again and going through fertility treatments, and really got to the end of our rope as far as the non-invasive treatments. And so we decided we were right there at the in vitro decision. And throughout that time, and those of you, I'm sure your listeners have experienced this, where it's month after month after month of disappointment. And this was a dream of Jolene's since she was a little girl, was to be a mom. And so you're going through that disappointment. It's wearing you down. And she got to the point where it was a real depressed state. And but as we were going through that period, she had a night, probably the lowest night that we had. And at that time, I was going through law school, studying for the bar exam. I wasn't exactly in.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in tune with what was going on, but I had other things going on too. And it was a night that I'll never forget, because she woke up the next day just a completely different person. But she was woken up in the middle of the night and really felt like she felt that she didn't have to give birth to a child to be a mother. And so, we knew we were going to have we had nieces and nephews at the time. We thought, well, maybe that's what that means. But it was just a switch was flipped.
Yep.
And so we got up, I believe it was the next day. We went to church for the first time in quite a while. I mean, we were having a really rough go at things. And so we went to church the next day, and that day was the day that Carl and Danielle Black were leaving to go to Ethiopia to pick up their daughter. And she looked over at me and she said, I think we need to consider doing this. And I said, okay. At that point, you know, you're everything that you feel like your expectations for life at that point have been slowly worn down and worn off. And really at that point we were to a place where we were open to that, and thankfully so, because if we had just decided to do this at some point, it would have been a different story. But really going through that pain, going through that breakdown of what we thought our family had to look like, led us to the point where adoption was just of course.
And I mean, obviously, so you know, Darin has humbly mentioned this. You know, going to law school. You were at Michigan State, correct?
Cooley Law School.
Cooley Law School
in Lansing, though.
In Lansing, yeah. Okay,
right.
Yep. Which again, Lansing, guys, I don't. People act like I know anything about Lansing, and as you know, I'm super West Michigan elitist. Like if it's not 30 minutes from the lake, I don't know anything about the place. We had a family wedding that was in Lansing a few years ago, and people are like asking me about the area, whatever. I'm like, I know not Grand Rapids to the lake. That's all I know. Yeah. Don't talk to me about whatever. But I digress. For you guys at that point, I mean, before this adoption decision, I mean, obviously you'd make some intentional decisions about your further education and like the direction that you were going. Mm-hmm. How did this fit? Like, was there a direction that was there any pause buttons that you had to hit or anything like that?
It didn't fit very well with what we thought our life was going to look like. Mm-hmm. You know, and I was going to go to law school. I did well in law school. I graduated 5th in my class. You know, if it wasn't for graduating in 2009, I probably would have had a lot of decent offers. Yeah. But this was the start of that career and that life. And so, you know, it kind of hit pause on our picture of what life was going to look like for us. It didn't really pause. I continued to practice law, you know, and put together a career, but at the same time, we're jet setting off to Ethiopia and seeing things that completely changed our lives and changed our values. We sold everything for our first adoption. You know, you come up with $27,000 in cash. That's a difficult thing to do when you're, you know, up to your neck in student loans and starting off new in a career. And so you sell everything, which changes how you feel about your things, your relationship to your things. I sold a beloved canoe, and I felt here's the kicker. I felt zero remorse about it. Yep. I couldn't wait to get rid of it because I knew where that money was going. Yep. And I knew, you know, where we were going with it. And so that it was a real shift in our whole paradigm of what life was going to look like for us. But it was welcomed at that point. You know, it wasn't a loss to us. It was just, okay, this is where life is going. And with a lot of gratitude at the same time.
So coming on the heels of the first adoption, I mean, how does one go from one adoption, which can be exhausting in and of itself, just one, and then you're like, hey, Let's
do this again.
Let's do it again and again and again. What did that look like for you guys?
Well, it really. First of all, our first adoption went extremely quickly. So started in March, ended in August, came home in August, which is unheard of. Yep. And part of that was because we were one of the first ones at that agency to adopt an infant. And just to back up a little bit, because this needs to be told, but when Jolene miscarried, it would have been in, you know, beginning of 2008, March of 2008. Claire, the first child that came home, if her birth date is fairly accurate, which is in December of 2008, she would have been conceived likely about the time that that we had our miscarriage. And so just the timing of everything and it just came together so well, and we had such a great experience that now I will blame this on Jolene because we ended up going out to Claire's village and seeing where she was from because we wanted to experience that. It was about 4 hours outside. And we visited the village, visited where she was at, and there were children there, obviously, that were looking for parents. And you see that, and immediately I mean, we both kind of looked at each other. It didn't need to be said that, this was how we were going to build our family. This wasn't going to be the last time we were going to be in Ethiopia. Now, I said, let's give it, maybe a year and we'll come back. And then 6 months later, we had signed up for another adoption. So, I blame Jolene, but I definitely was. She's the cheerleader. She was the cheerleader in high school, and she's the one that says, we'll figure this out as we go. We'll build the plane as we're flying. So, I've just enjoyed the ride. It's been awesome. So.
That's good. Yeah. So you're in your second adoption, and then did you guys have a number in mind? Were you like Andy and I have had we know what the conversation sounds like, with biological kids of, I came from, me and my younger brother, my wife is the 3 of 4 girls. And so for us, it was like, oh, 3 kids, that'll be our compromise right in the middle, right? We end up having 4, we have these discussions about what we think is going to,
and I came from a family of 2 and now we have 5.
Yeah.
So,
right. Joke's on you.
Yeah.
Wow.
So was it literally just after, once one happened and was in place, and then you what was your, how long does it take before you consider the next one? What was the talk around that?
So Jolene came from a family of 3 boys, and Jolene came from a family of 4 with 2 boys and 2 girls. And so, I always felt like we would probably have a fairly large family because of that. And really at that time, we ended up adopting our 2 middle children at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was because Ethiopia had shifted and had started looking at shutting down adoptions.
Oh, okay.
And so we were told by the adoption agency that, hey, if you're going to build your family with adoption and you want more than 2 children, you should probably, jump in here and really do what you can now, because we're not sure how long this is going to be open. We're not sure what's going to happen. So that was a catalyst to that. But yeah, it was, in the end, I'm really glad we did. Now coming home with 3 children in diapers and 2 with formula, that was a whole, to go from 0 to 3 in about 18 months was quite a trip. And, especially because we had a much different emotional experience with one of them that came home on the second go round. But yeah, that was largely, and then we were going to wait until the older ones were in school, and then we were going to go back and look again to see what adoption looked like at that point. So to kind of round out our family.
Yes.
Now it sounds that's one of the weird things about adoption is you have to make that decision, and they actually ask you, do you want a healthy boy or do you want a healthy girl? And you're thinking, man, well, do I? I mean, what does this look like?
Yeah.
But we looked at it as, if you were going to have a child biologically, you would choose to have a child that's healthy, or you would, if that's where your heart's leading is to a child with special needs, that's a different story. We weren't prepared to do that, and so we didn't feel like that was our place. So that's that's where we landed, but that's really how we came to determine what we were going to do. Flying by the seat of our pants as usual, but yeah, that was how it came about.
So in the midst of all of this, I think, how you guys you're investing emotional, mental, spiritual energy into these kids who have, and this will be my follow-up question, the needs that they have as being adoptive kids. Your energies are going into there. What does it look like for you guys, for you and your wife, to be healthy together as far as like the marriage was concerned? What were some things that, maybe things that went well, maybe things that didn't go well?
Yeah, I think, we really grew up together. Obviously we met when we were 15 and 16. Yeah. We spent at that point, you go through those life changes, those challenges together. It really solidifies you in that, one, you've grown up together. Two, you've seen the same things. You're kind of you're at that point, you're on a team.
Yeah.
And really, you can't go through something that difficult and then have those highs and lows without really creating a bond that I know we wouldn't have that had we not gone through that. So where it gets difficult is you don't know what you're going to face with adopted children moving forward. You know that they have trauma. You don't know how they're going to handle it in any particular situation or at any particular stage in life.
Sure.
And sometimes, to be quite transparent, there's times where you're not sure whether it's attention seeking with the trauma, and things like that, or is this truly something that's happening? And so there's times where there can be some push pull. I'm a little bit more of I don't like to have the wool pulled over my eyes.
Yeah.
And so I tend to be a little more
rub some dirt on it. Yeah.
But there's obviously I understand the trauma, and usually these things come up right at bedtime, right? And you're trying
sure. Yep. Of course.
Trying to work through that. But so that's really where you have to have a lot of patience, a lot of grace for each other, because not only are our children going to handle it differently, but she and I are going to handle it differently and view it differently.
So at this point in your story, you have 3 kids. What made you have that decision to adopt the 4th child, and tell us like what timeline?
Because there was decent.
There's time in between there.
Decent gap, and I even remember this now as it was happening. It was like oh, number 4. Okay, yeah.
So we were overwhelmed with the first 3, I'd say, to put it politely, but. So that slowed us down a little bit, and so that we always knew we wanted 2 boys, 2 girls, and so that slowed us down somewhat. But Ethiopia also did shut down in the meantime, and so we had actually started the process to adopt from Burundi, and in the meantime, Ethiopia opened back up, and that was when we went back, and we actually, so in the process of taking trips with Awaken Alive to Ethiopia. We had dropped off, there's a Catholic orphanage there, and we had dropped off some formula, some diapers, things like that, just to help them out. And amazingly, the boy that we ended up adopting, Leo, was transferred to that orphanage. We had no idea that this would happen. So he was transferred there from Adama to the capital city, to this particular orphanage.
Wow.
And so it's just little things like that came together so well and amazingly. And so yeah, we wanted to round out our family. We wanted to have 4. We knew we wanted 2, and Ben was dying to have a brother, and that's understandable. And so, we knew it was time when they were back in school, and it just felt like the right thing at that point. So
yeah. Again, stinking cute as all get out. I see Ben in particular, and I go like, I could not say no to that child. Like that's how. And you're the parent, right? I just as the outsider, I'm like, man, that smile, and I'd be done for. So the trauma piece, as you talked about, don't know when it's going to show up, how it's going to show up. What has it been like just in terms of creating support structures, I guess, for your family and for your kids? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's looked like reaching out to professionals. It's looked like play therapy. It's looked like a lot of late nights, talking through, hearing them out.
Yeah.
Because it hits at different times. It'll come out of the blue, and every one of them has handled it differently. And so it's we've utilized play therapy. We've utilized now we're on to a little more advanced where it's regular therapy. It's understanding. It's talking to an adoption community. It's talking with others who have adopted. Thankfully, we keep pretty good track of each other. You go through the process. You're in country with others who have done it. With technology, we can have friends across anywhere and stay in touch. And that's really been a huge support mechanism for us. But it's being humble enough to recognize that I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm in over my head, and recognizing that this is not, as a father, it's tempting to want to solve that, and it'll never be solved. And you have to come to terms with that and do the best you can, but at the same time recognize that I'm not going to be the one who's going to solve this, and I may not even be the one who does what's best for them outside of a professional setting.
Yeah.
And so coming to peace with that can be difficult, and sometimes it ebbs and flows. Some days it's easier than it is with others, but that's largely been, and thankfully adoption is much more normalized now than it has been in the past. And so we're grateful for those who have gone ahead of us, who have really brought that to the forefront and made that a normal process.
So as you've been a dad, what is one thing or several things that you've learned about yourself through the parenting process?
Oh man, I can be such a hypocrite. Oh gosh, a great example. I'm on my kids constantly about screen time and how much they're on iPods or whatever it is, and then I'll get a ding on Sunday that my screen time's up 30%. Oh gosh. So it's funny how I get a tap on my shoulder whenever I find something about a child that's I feel like, hey, you need to get this under control. You need to figure this out. We need to get this in a better place. Mm-hmm. It's usually something that I'm also struggling with, and so you learn to take a step back and really look at that. But yeah, man, I can be such a
and it just seems to me that as my own kids get older, like they are more and more aware of my own hypocrisy and God bless them, very willing to point it out. Very willing to bring that to my attention. That's right. Yeah.
No holding back.
Hey, Dad, remember when you did? Yeah. Thank you, child. Go back to your screen now. Yeah, and obviously the screen time thing in just in itself, like this past year has just been the worst for
challenge.
It. Yeah. This morning, when my kids hear this episode, they'll be like, So this morning, Jackie is on her phone early before the kids get up, putting online timers on every one of their iPod through our network or whatever, and like cut it back significantly, and did not. We were going to tell them today, like once they got home or whatever. Well, the thing is, they got up early this morning, so they were on their tablets like early, whatever. They're just burning their time. Like they were like they're not going to have. They're going to get home. I know that's what happened. They got home and because Aaron, my eldest, my 11-year-old, calls me like, Dad, all right, they're not connecting. I think something's wrong, and I just wanted to be like, oh, that's strange. We'll have to.
Talk to Mom about that.
I have to take a look at that when we get back.
Talk to Mom.
Yeah, yes. Jackie, by the way, she is getting. I think she's actually going to get one for Julie too. Shirt says "Ask your father" on it.
Oh no,
we're in trouble. We're in trouble.
Nice.
So, not because you guys were just you just weren't satisfied with one adventure. You could have just said, "Hey, the kids, we've learned so much, we've grown so much together. Our perspective has changed. Just our entire world. It's a brand new day at the Shrock household after all of this. Man, way to go, team. Let's walk off into the sunset with our family." You said no. You said, "I have an idea. Let's start a not-for-profit." And not only just not just some run-of-the-mill not-for-profit like a puppy adoption agency or something like that. No. Awaken Alive came along in this process, and forgive me, during the adoption. I'm just trying to remember the timeline. You can fill me in. What was the timeline? Well, first of all, tell us about Awaken Alive.
Yeah,
because Darin's the CEO, and what official title does your wife have in this? Co-CEO?
She's a co-founder.
Co-founder.
She's a board member emeritus or
Emeritus.
However you want to pronounce it.
Emeritus.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're a permanent board member.
In perpetuity. There's another one. There's another one for you.
Unless she really messes up.
Embezzlement, something like that. No. So you guys have this role at Awaken Alive as you have started this. Tell us about the organization. Tell us about where in your, adoption process and all this, like how, because this thing was birthed out of that. So.
Yeah. It's been it has been 10 years since the first conversation, and that's incredible. But it's obviously a nonprofit. It started when we went back to adopt Ben and Stella, our middle two children, and we had noticed that there were a lot of kids. We were in the capital city. We noticed there was a lot of kids in the street running around during school hours. And we're like, what's going on with this? Why is this happening? And so, through a mutual connection with the adoption agency, we ran into a gentleman who had started. It was like a boys and girls club in the capital, in the Kachine area, and so we went and visited. Just said, hey, let's go check it out, see what they've got going on there, because it really felt like this country had given so much to us, and we saw so much there, and we really fell in love with the country and the area, and so we wanted to see what else was out there for us to do, and so we met this gentleman, saw what they were doing there, and it was phenomenal. We walked in the doors; these kids were they were learning, they had a different look of hope in them than the children that we saw on the street. And they were doing things the right way. They were equipping these kids to go out and change their families, their communities. And we said, how do we become a part of this? What else do you want to do here? Let's sit down and hash this out and figure out what we can do. And really Jolene and Danielle Black at the time really grabbed it by the horns and took off with it from there. And at that time, they had the after-school program. They said, really, kids are jumping into the public school system, and they have no prep for that whatsoever. So even if they do have the ability to get into the school system, which was difficult, they weren't prepped for it at all. So they needed a kindergarten academy, and that's really where we said, okay, they were a standalone nonprofit and still are. They're an Ethiopian nonprofit. We don't have any influence over their board. We do grant funding to them. So this is their academy. This is their program. And so so we said, you know what? We'll find the money. You have the dream. We'll figure out how to get the money to you and make it happen. And so we needed to raise $44,000 the first year, and it took a garage sale again. Whatever stuff we had after the adoption was sold again.
Yes. You're really pursuing this minimalist lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So minimalism it was really out of necessity.
Yes, right.
So these women did a fantastic job of tugging on heartstrings and calling attention to what was going on there, what was possible with $44,000 to send 35 kids to school for a year for $44,000. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And so that, ended up raising a little over that and starting from there. And we they welcomed 35 kids to the academy. And now there's over 200 kids that are a part of this.
Wow.
And, that they still have the academy. They do 3 years of kindergarten there, which I'm not so sure we shouldn't do that here.
Has its merits.
It has its merits.
Yeah.
So there's 3 years of kindergarten in the academy itself. And then there's a tutorial program where they go to the public school, but then they have tutoring that can have similar to a Boys and Girls Club type setting. And these kids what's remarkable is to see them come in, at 4 years old, just meek and mild and just not sure what's going to happen. And then you come back later at the end of the year and they're all over you and they're excited and their parents are proud and they have this hope that's just emanating from them. And that's really what it's all about. And obviously we're a part of it in the sense that, we feel like we're helping to provide that, but these people on the ground in Ethiopia are doing amazing things for these kids, and it's been just remarkable to be a part of.
Awaken Alive. Where does the name come from?
I think it really, I remember the conversation. Actually, it was in Carl and Danielle's living room, and it really was about, this part of the capital. It's one of the poorer parts of the capital, and what we found was that a lot of people, even Ethiopians, would tell us, "Well, why are you going to Kitchen? There's nothing there." I mean, and a lot of times people would avoid it because they felt like, if they made eye contact with people from this area, there was this rumor of a curse that would happen.
Sure.
If you made eye contact, and so it was really about awakening and creating an awakening and a livelihood in this area, and so it just made sense that's what we were trying to do, and trying to give hope and really awakening and a more life to the area. And so that's really where that was born from.
So 10 years in, from 35 kids to over 200.
Right.
And again, with what 2020 handed to us, how is that's I just wonder about organizations such as your guys's, how you've navigated these recent realities.
Yeah, they don't have unemployment in Ethiopia. So if they run into something like this, there's no safety nets. And so really, when this came through, our first concern was, what are we going to, so there's 30 people on staff, in this organization. And so, again, that's not our staff, that's theirs, but we still feel responsible to provide the funding for them. So, thankfully we were able to do a COVID relief type of fundraiser and keep them employed, keep their wages going throughout that entire time. And we feel really grateful that we were able to do that. People responded here so well, and we're really grateful for that. Not only were we able to do that, we were also able to provide extra food stipends. Most of the families get food stipends anyways, because nutrition's an important part of that education component. And so, we were able to provide extra food stipends as well. And really, whatever, we had somewhat of a rainy day fund that we were waiting for something, like this to happen. Not this, but something, in case something happened, right?
Something.
So, and so we just pulled out all the stops and said, you know what, whatever you need, we'll figure it out. And really, it was one of those moments where you have to, it's an emergency. You have to help now. If you're not, if any time you're going to help, it has to be now. So, we were just grateful that we could pull through for them.
How many times, because you take small teams of people down there periodically. Obviously, that has not happened in the last year. Tell me about, I guess, just in general, like how people have partnered with you guys. I mean, obviously, you're doing fundraising efforts. You do the galas. You do, there's other things. So there's fundraising, but then there's other kind of boots on the ground or kind of these experiential things. Mm-hmm. Tell me the different ways in which people kind of engage with your organization that way. Yeah,
we normally do take trips. We try to take one a year, and that is twofold. One, it's to sometimes, well, let me back up. One way to financially help is to sponsor a child for $44 a month. And we ask for a 2-year commitment on that. Most people, we've had some sponsors that have been with their children for 9 years.
Wow.
And we're really grateful for them. And so that's one way to do it. And we've had sponsors go over with us and get to meet that child. And that's a really, really neat experience. So we do that. We also, we try to teach English lessons or do different things with the kids and really just spend time with the kids, spend time with the parents too. That's a really neat connection as well. But one way is travel, which we're not sure when that's going to happen. It's on hold for now, obviously, but we'll keep an eye on that because that is a lot of fun. But the other way, like I said, it was the sponsorship, $44 a month. We still have 9 children left for the most recent class that came in. Every year we shift the kids older, up one grade, and we welcome 20 or 30 more kids, and so far we have 9 more that need to be sponsored, and so they're available. We usually do our biggest fundraising event of the year is the Hope Gala, and normally that's in March. And this year, we start planning it for that in October, November, and we had a huge spike at that point. So we said, I think we're going to take a year off, or not a year off. We're going to take our time on this. And really, as we really like the in-person events, and so we really didn't want to pull the trigger on an online event. So we're going to push that. It looks like to September at some point, and really hope to be able to do that in person again. Because it's not just about. It is about the fundraising, but it's also about creating a community of people that are together in this and have been going for years.
Yeah,
virtual is just not the same.
It's not the same. No, and the galas are good. You guys put on a good gala.
It's fun.
It's a good time.
It's a lot of fun.
I get to have a high school reunion whenever I go. But it is just the experience, and I think. In a day and time in which, and obviously, and Darin, I'm sure you guys are aware of this. Just the idea, we want to believe that all these non-for-profits are these squeaky clean organizations, and they're operating efficiently, and the stewardship is there in a good sort of way. But then on occasion we find out it's like, it's like, well, 70% of our budget goes to marketing, and things like this. Yeah. One thing I have to say, what I've been just amazingly impressed with your guys' organization is that the way in which you handle the resources. I mean, there's great transparency there, and there's just a very clear mission in place. Darin is not living in a mansion. No. There's not the private Shrock jet waiting way down the road. My perception is, just quite honestly, is that people are absolutely in this for 100% the right reason. Their heart is in the right place to serve these kids and these families in Ethiopia, and it's just it's a refreshing thing. Do you guys ever have the feeling what's next for Awaken Alive? Do you just keep on build more kids and more kids and more kids, or like how do you think about that?
If you don't mind, I do want to speak to the
please,
cost.
Please.
Everybody's volunteer at this point.
Yeah.
So I am, Jolene and Danielle are, the board is, we have tried bringing on employees here and there in a part-time fashion, and it's for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out for us with employment. But last time I looked we have a volunteer bookkeeper, go figure. And last time I talked to him with the underwriting of the gala, which we do have a very generous donor who underwrites the gala every year. With the underwriting of the gala, if you take that out, we're looking at roughly 3 to 5% in costs, and that's in printing.
Copy paper on.
Paper,
right.
Maybe some Facebook ads.
I
mean, when you really have a heart for it, it's really easy to just say, I don't need anything from this. I mean, this is one more kid. This is one more, one more raise for somebody or something similar. So yeah, we are very conscious of that. We want to do that, a service to our donors and to these kids. That's for them. So.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, but moving forward, as far as where we go from here, it's all about adding as many kids as we can.
Yes.
We plan to follow these kids all the way up through high school.
Gosh.
There are other organizations out there who partner with kids to handle scholarships and things like that. But apart from that, I think for us, the next level is more synergy with other organizations. How do we get skilled trades into these kids? Because not every kid's going to go to college.
Sure.
We don't do that here.
Right.
Why would they do that there? So that's kind of the next step, is how do we get them, because we do have a program for some of the mothers of the students who have learned a trade. They've actually taken literacy classes first, because how are you going to build a business plan when you don't know how to read and write? So we've had literacy. They've learned how to do weaving. They've learned how to do all these other skills, and so we've had some experience with that. But that's what's next on the horizon in my mind is, yes, let's have the kids come in, but you can't just dump them then out and say, oh, good luck at that point. You need to have other avenues to get them up on their feet and running. That's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. But again, sustainable. I mean, do do you have a sense that you are changing the culture? I mean, again, there's a whole country obviously there's a whole country of Ethiopia and really, and just obviously, just thinking about Africa as a whole, and just the ongoing just social upheaval and all the things that have gone on within the continent. But what would you say? I mean, if you were to say, okay, you're in 10 years and you go 10 years in the future, and you look back, what are you hoping? What are you really hoping to see? I mean, with like the concrete sort of proof is in the pudding sort of thing. What would you say your hope is for that?
Yeah, one of my proudest things is that I get to, when we go there, they really don't know who we are.
Yeah,
which is fantastic.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, right.
Because they shouldn't know who we are. I mean, this needs to be Ethiopian, really. And so, I love that they don't, and I hope they still don't know who I am in 10 years. And so, and around that is my goal. My hope would be that those who have graduated, those who have moved on, those who are committed to, bettering their community, will turn around and make this a self-sustaining program or school or system, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. But that would be ideal, is that this becomes a community process that is growing within itself and not needing that outside infusion.
Yeah, that's
the ultimate goal. Yeah.
So there's a sustainability, obviously, and all of that, and and I wonder, 'cause you've used the word hope a lot, and that being kind of a central thing, that you're hoping for. What are, I mean, on the ground there within the community in which you're serving, that's being served right now through all of this? I mean, what are the big, obviously some kind of, naturally thinking about where they're at, like natural challenges that are in front of them, but what do you see as the primary challenge that a lot of these families are facing? I mean, there's obviously poverty, but then there's a lot of other things that kind of come out of that.
Yeah, one of them is generational differences. We see this even when we've been there visiting. We've seen moms pulling their kids in by the ear and saying, "This, the kid's not listening to me."
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Well, the kid has learned at school that this is a healthier way to live, and so there is a lot of intergenerational learning and processing and figuring out that, okay, maybe this young whippersnapper knows what they're talking about, and so that's some of the push-pull just within the family units, but also it's a country that's growing really quickly. Believe it or not, it is really growing quickly. My fear is that there will be a push out of this community into areas that will disrupt it to the point where it can't. There will be so much disruption that they will lose the continuity of the benefit, and so that's a concern. There was at one time there was talk of a ring road going in similar to 465 around Indianapolis, and that was going to really come right through the community and really disrupt the community. And so that scattering, once they leave the area, because there is a concern for that, and once they leave the area, you lose contact and you lose control over what you can do for them. So that's probably one of the bigger obstacles that we face.
Yeah, it's I think it's interesting to think about infrastructure development being a disruptive thing.
Yeah,
like we're always talking about, like, man, it'll just be better, we get one more road through here, or things like this. And yet, it's an interesting challenge. And as like you say, as the country develops, did you feel like you had to become I was going to say an Ethiopia expert, but like, I mean, cultural knowledge, cultural understanding, these sort of things. Was that part of the learning process for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And really, we actually took a class. I'm really grateful. So we have, the first area that we visited the first time was funded by a Swiss organization. So we are in partnership. We do strategic meetings every year. I'm usually there in sometime in November, where we sit down and we say, okay, what does the next year look like? What do the next 3 years look like? What does the next 5 years look like? What do the next 5 years look like? So we're very much in tune with what are we expecting, what's coming down the road. We both are funding, this Ethiopian nonprofit, and even though we're both funding it, we need to know, how are our resources, because we try to utilize resources as well as we can. So that's part of it. But also it is understanding the culture, understanding that generally speaking, they don't like confrontation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Americans don't have a problem with confrontation. I found out that the Swiss group that we work with, they have no problem with confrontation.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so
yeah.
I'm like,
yeah, right.
I'm uncomfortable.
I'm so uncomfortable.
I'm an American.
Yes, right.
So yeah, not only have we learned Ethiopian culture, we've learned Swiss culture as well, because we're all a part of this. Mm-hmm. And but again, this is an independent nonprofit, Ethiopian nonprofit, and we rely on, at a certain point, you have to say, okay, that maybe wouldn't be how I would do it.
Yep.
But you're the experts on your culture. You're the experts on how this needs to be, how you can get things done. And it doesn't always get done the way that we expect it to.
Yep.
But you know what? They get it done.
Yeah. And as you're saying, Western culture, but also you're saying as the Swiss, like where things, certain ideas about efficiency and kind of like this is the best way to do it, and there's kind of a mechanism there in place. Every other place that I've been in the world that are not Western or European, these cultures, like the value system is completely different in that way.
Yes,
much more relational, far less transactional.
Yes.
in that kind of way.
Yeah.
And so it just seems, I think part of that is, I think the only way to learn is you do have to go and be with the people. You have to hear from them, and have to realize that there is more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. So just what I hear you just saying is there's kind of like this humility index that has to be
very much so
developed in all of it.
Yeah, you really do, because even if we see the most efficient way to do something, if you were to try and do it that way in Ethiopia, it would be the least efficient way to do it.
Yeah.
And so everybody is really well intentioned.
Yep.
The Swiss are really well intentioned. They want what's best. I want what's best. We're all trying to get there as efficiently and economically as we can. Yep. And they've been around. They were here way before I was. So there's a lot of times where I'm learning from them a lot. And so it's a balance like anything else. It's really fascinating, to be quite honest, to try and bring all of these cultures together. And we've been able to, with a lot of grace, we've been able to make it work really well.
Are you more hopeful now? When we look at the world sometimes and how people are or are not getting along, I think it can be kind of like if you don't turn your TV off frequently enough, it can be hard to remain optimistic about that. For you, at the end of the day, what is your perspective about people's ability cross culturally and cross economically and all of that? What is your opinion for people to be able to come together and reach good outcomes?
I think if you really, really care about what you're trying to do, so obviously we really care about these kids, and in the end, what I think is best, you almost, that love for them will make you much more deferential, really, in how it has to be done. So that to me is really has to stay at the forefront. And there's times where you're almost certain that you're right, and you want to impose your will on it. And in the end, you have to also remember that if I win here, what are we really winning? Even if it is what's best, what are we getting out of this? Am I only going to be right? Is that it?
Yeah.
And in the end, am I hurting their relationship? So it does, again, it comes back to that efficiency. And you know what? You may do something inefficient, heaven forbid, but you got there anyway. And really, as long as we get there, you know, I'd rather get there and all of us do it together than get there and us be, you know, walking away because, well, great, we got here. Now I'm walking away. I mean, that's just not productive to me.
Yeah. That's,
But that's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You come around, I mean, in general, I just have this, I have this sneaking suspicion that one day, you know, I don't know, at the end of my life or whatever, I'm just going to have this aha moment that I was just wrong about a lot of things, right? Like this is the way you do it. And it's just like, but to your point, it's like, being right. And culturally right now, the cultural moment that we're in, being right over being loving seems to be a thing that we're working through right now.
It definitely is.
And, you know, and there's dead bodies, literally and figuratively,
right,
all over because of it.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And
I'm grateful that I've had that perspective of having to take a step back and say, okay, what is happening here?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times where I get frustrated is it feels like we're really fighting over things that we don't need to fight about. And that's where I get frustrated because there are bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
There are much, much bigger fish to fry. And I guess that's, you know, when you're trying to solve something like what we're trying to help with in Ethiopia, and then you come home and people are fighting about masks, you kind of go,
yes,
right?
Yes.
I mean, you do, it's like, well, I mean, okay, I mean, it doesn't.
Yep.
And I get that, you know, not everybody can have that and gets that perspective and hasn't been fortunate enough to have that like we have, but yeah, it almost there's times where I have to step back and remember. Not everybody has had that perspective.
Yeah.
Well, right, because I'm sure to some people you can seem really like, oh, Mr. Africa over there. We get it.
Yeah.
They don't houses with no floors. You know, whatever. But at the same time, like, you know, having, I think in general, the more global a perspective we can have, the more we can understand about the world collectively and understand our place within it. That's a net gain. That's just a net gain.
Right.
And quite honestly, yeah, if you have the opportunity to be able to connect with different cultures or to see life in a different way, I mean, and I just think about, you know, 2 years ago, trip that we did to Jamaica for, you know, we're building homes for people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jamaican building codes are not the same as they are here. But you know, I was leading a group of young people and all of this, whatever, and they're having this. You can see the wheels turning. The hard realization that the houses that we are building for these families, so that these families can live together and are not separated. These homes are like condos to these people. Like these are because they're being built with quality materials and everything. But these kids are like, wait, this is what they're living in. And meanwhile, the family that's right there working alongside us is thrilled.
Yeah.
Right. And the perspective, because it's like the thing that they're having here is exactly what they need. It meets all of their needs and where they are and whatever. Mm-hmm. And then you just start to it's just like, well, okay, you know, all it took was a couple of days of hard labor and 108 degrees, and a little perspective comes.
Yeah.
You know,
and we have to work for that perspective,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Here, and that's I have to work to remember that. Gosh, that next thing that I want.
Yep.
Really, maybe that's not something that I should want.
Yeah.
And so. We just get bombarded with it every day here, and so that's a whole nother conversation. But
yeah, that'll be when we have you back there, Darin. Just Darin, real quick, man. You know, we've been talking about this. What in the bigger kind of swing back around to the bigger adoption piece.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about this in the context of foster care before too, but like I think the church has a lot to say about this. I think about faith communities have a lot to offer this perspective. It's basically like on the side of even like some with like the foster care dilemmas that are in. It's been well established in many states that if every church within a state population said, okay, we're gonna take this many kids, it would eliminate these crises. Like we could, kids could be taken care of, well fed, educated, loved, cared for, all of that. Is there from your perspective, because obviously you guys partner with a lot of a lot of faith communities and you have a lot of those conversations. I'm sure you talk with a lot of pastors and other leaders as well. What does the church need to be doing? What do they suck at? Let's just I can hear, and he doesn't want to say this because he's like he goes, I have donors I have to take care of. What are faith communities missing out on? What would be helpful in the perspective? Because I think there's a lot that can be gained or better understood in those spheres.
Yeah, I'm careful about criticizing the church. I think there's a lot of really good people who are really trying to do what is best and what they believe they're led to do. And so I'm not going to be the millennial that throws the church under the bus. But but having said that,
yes,
I would say my perspective of the church, and this is growing up in the church, this is now seeing the church somewhat change in the last 10 years or so. I would say I feel like there's a lot of effort of the church to try and meet people where they are. And I would say, especially with our generation, we're not impressed with you trying to be something that you're not. And so we see through that in a real big hurry.
Yep.
And so I think if you go about your business and you do what you think is best and you're doing what Jesus has called us to do, you're gonna get the attention you want.
Right.
It's not gonna be trying to make it comfortable. I really don't think it will be. And this kind of goes back to, are we going to say that the way that you're doing life is okay and we're just going to be a part of that life? Or are we going to tell you this is a better way of doing life?
Yep.
And so I can tell you, I've never been happier than when I sold everything I had and had a mission in mind and I was going to go, we were going to go do this thing. I'd never been happier.
Strange. It's like Jesus said something about that somewhere. Darin, and again, been in pastoral work for just long enough, and we've said this on the show before here. I just am increasingly aware that the God that we actually serve is one of comfort and safety.
Absolutely.
In the Western church, and nothing like to talk to Christians outside of the global West. They know nothing when it comes to their faith. They know nothing of comfort and safety.
Right.
Like that's not associated with like, hey, follow Jesus and you'll have a health, a safer and more comfortable life. That's not it. There's a cost. There's an absolute cost,
right?
For most of them,
right.
and I think if just part of it is just like, Western Christians, it's like Ethiopia, obviously. Its Christian history is about as old as we can, like,
absolutely,
Coptic tradition and all of this. Like it is old, y'all, like real back there.
Yeah.
If the church here saw those people as brothers and sisters, connected, like they would their own, like their own here, I just wonder if that's also a helpful perspective. Again, thinking globally about our connection, our responsibility, right now in the United States, just as a side note, you can tell I'm getting on my high horse here, Andy. And Andy's looking at the clock, and he's like, Joel, rein it in. Churches in the United States right now roughly hold a little over $6 billion in real estate. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. That is being used 1 or maybe 2 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and again, this is not a slam on where I'm sitting right now, by the way, but like, for instance, we're sitting in a 71,000 square foot facility here. Right. And the reason we're able to do this is the space is not used on the night that we, on the nights that we, this time that we record. It is earlier in the day, but basically, like most churches, Sunday mornings, maybe a midweek, and maybe there's a few people, in on for a Bible study on a Tuesday morning or whatever. I don't say that to be critical, but what I do say is, we're in the lap of luxury, globally speaking, in that way. Mm-hmm. We're not meeting in a basement waiting for the police to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So just, again, it just seems to me like perspective when it comes to organizations like yours and that are doing other great things all around the world. It just seems to me that the church, there just could be a good education that the church could receive if it was just willing. We don't have to search far. All I have to do is click on your website to see what's going on, to see how there can be partnerships and how there can be real significant life change for people.
Yeah. I think you hit it on the head though, because that comfort and safety, it's very tempting. It feels very natural.
I like it. Yeah. I'm a big fan of comfort and safety.
Yeah.
My seats in my car are warmed. Like I hit a button. Like, come on.
But I think, what if that, I think we feel like we have to cater to that. We have to hit what people want, and people want that lifestyle, want that life. What if you didn't even want that anymore? What if instead of I'll help you find your American dream, what if we found out that the American dream wasn't all it's cracked up to be?
Yeah.
What if there's a different way of living where you don't even want that anymore? Yeah. And you're fine without it. And so I think that's the shift. I think that's the heart change that really changes things.
Darin has just single-handedly secured his second appearance on the show. We'll do it. He'll be when we do a theme on simplicity and essential. Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Darin, we want to thank you for coming out tonight. You've said some amazing things, and
thank you.
Our listeners have got to know you a lot better. Before we let you go, though, we have to do one thing.
Yes.
It's the pop quiz.
All right.
Now it's time for Dudes and Dads pop quiz.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that, buddy. So let's see here. Darin, we're going to first start off with the first question. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
This came up.
Oh.
Yeah, no joke. My son asked me which superhero I would be the other night.
Yeah.
So he prepared you for this.
He did unwillingly. He did that. Oh man. I said Thor. I'm a Thor fan. He's a Hulk fan. Man, I would really because I've been on a hijacked airplane. I think I'd enjoy being able to fly.
That's true.
On my own.
Yes.
Is that fitting?
That seems. Yeah. If this thing goes down, at least I know I can grab my wife and fly to safety. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Apropos.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me the best thing that you've ever eaten in your life.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I have some very powerful sensory memory connections with Ethiopian food.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sitting around a community plate of injera with traditional Ethiopian food, it's hard to beat that, especially in country when you're with friends and we've worked hard and we've been together and we're sharing food. That's a great meal.
And the thing about Ethiopian food, when I was in my first 2 years in college up in Grand Rapids, there was a little Ethiopia, and actually in Grand Rapids they had this restaurant there, and
we actually went recently to it. Maybe not the same one, but
could be. It tastes like real food, Darin. You notice, you're actually what I am eating here, it's like I can almost sense the nutrients in it. There's like a wholesome, like just really like a wholesome, a simple wholesomeness to them.
It's very good for you.
Yeah.
And injera is gluten free, so it was kind of making its rounds here in the States, and so it's picking up popularity.
Oh, that's good. Oh,
yeah.
And you're right. And you're right. Again, food. You're right. When there are memories attached to it, always good.
Yep.
Darin, what's the last book you read?
Oh man, I'm reading 2 books right now.
Of course you are.
I always have a stack. So the 2 that I'm actually reading, one of them is Jerry Seinfeld's book. I think it's called "Is This Something?"
Yes.
Which has been fantastic.
That's got to be on my list.
Oh, man,
I just got done reading McConaughey with his Green Lights.
I finished that too.
Yeah, that was my jam.
That was a great book. It was
good.
I blew through that. I think in a weekend.
Yeah, it's one of those reads where you're just like, oh, good story. Yep.
Great book.
Yep.
And then I think it was Get Your Life Back with John Eldridge.
Okay.
I've been kind of going through that too. It's similar to the
Jewish agnostic comedian and John Eldridge. Way to mix it up, bro. Nice.
So what is one thing that you are good at that people do not know about?
Oh, man. I like to think that I actually won Jolene's heart with my dancing. So
that seems fair.
I got some rhythm.
That's right.
It's...
Seems
not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we sacrificed our rhythm for a lot of other things. I understand. Darin, do you remember the first CD you purchased with your own money?
I do.
Ooh,
it's a close tie. It was about the same time. It was either Bush, Machine Head.
Yes, I love it. Yes,
or it was Green Day. Oh, what's the title?
It's Dookie.
Dookie, yes.
94, I think, 93 or 94.
I always get mixed up. Dookie or Nookie.
yeah. Fair enough.
Right, wait a minute, what was the title of that?
I understand.
All right. So, what is one thing that you once said about you at your funeral?
Whew.
Right, we like to go deep. You're having a good time with these, and then we go deep.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat real quick?
What is one thing that you once said about you at your funeral?
Man, oh man. I just hope love and hope is thrown around a lot. Yeah, I've thought about that. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
You don't have a near death experience without thinking about that. But yeah, I hope that I hope that love and hope are talked about a lot, and that that's a heavy question.
Yeah, it is.
This is a little bit lighter, but it's still reflective. If you had a time machine, is there anything you'd go back and you'd try again? Where you're just like, either it was like, that was so much fun, I want to do it again, or you're like, I just screwed that up royally, and I'd just like to get a redo.
So I started writing back in probably 2009 or 10. I started writing, and I've been writing periodically here and there. I think I would have given that a lot more of a go if given the opportunity to pick that up again. So
I mean, either it's you or it's you and Jolene. If a book does not come out, I'm probably have to call you out on the carpet. I have a deep sense of loss.
Some of these things need to be written down simply because I'm starting to forget them.
Yeah, sure.
So
we're getting around that time where it's like a decent amount of life has happened. We get it.
All right.
Andy, you're gonna ask this.
Yeah, I'll ask that. You're
gonna ask it's a baseball question.
That's all right.
You're okay with a baseball question?
Okay,
go for it.
Question.
Go for it.
Who will win the World Series in 2021?
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I really hope he's right. Here's the deal. If he's right, we'll go back at the end of this year and we'll be like, and Darin nailed it.
Oh man. I always felt bad for Houston and how things ended up for them. I'd love to see them be able to pull it off.
Wow.
I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm a Cubs fan. We go to Wrigley. I love the Cubs. But I just
you'd like to see you and have this whole thing about redeeming things.
Yeah,
you're just like, I want to see that which has been broken and tossed aside, brought back.
I wanted the Bills in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
I wanted to see, or I wanted Cleveland in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
You guys are terrible.
Yep. Chiefs fan, so sorry. I'm well, now that we have now that we have Houston's manager, me being the Tigers fan that I am.
That's a good point.
Yeah, we're not sure. We're not sure how we feel about it, because it's like we believe this man will help us win, but at what cost, right? Like what tarnish is coming to our beloved organization? Oh my goodness!
Well, you passed.
Yeah, way to go,
passed.
Darin.
Oh,
Nicely done. Do we have applause? Would you have a pad for that?
We did at one point.
Andy's gonna touch buttons until something happens.
Yes.
I don't. Yeah, they nailed it. All right, beautiful. Darin, it has been a pleasure, my
Thank
friend,
you.
having you on.
Same here.
You are you're on the hook now for next time around, and you're an official Dudes and Dads podcast alumnus. So
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
way to go.
I'll be here.
Yeah, that's right, and I'll make sure of it. We guys, listeners, in the show notes, we're gonna have every bit of embarrassing pieces of information about Darin, his family. All that over at dudesanddadspodcast.com, so feel free to check that out. Guys, we do appreciate the support.
Yeah, we do.
We love feedback. dudesanddadspodcast@gmail.com. Love to get a note from you, or one of those fancy voice messages, memos that
voice notes,
whatever you want to send to
whatever
us,
you call it.
whatever it is. Guys, just remember that we're here for you. You're here for us. We're all on this beautiful journey together. So until next time, we do wish you grace
And peace.